What up guys, Adrian from YouMotorcycle.com, and today we're going to talk about large frame and small frame Vespas, how they're different. I got all my notes with me, so let's go through it. There is a ton of actually pretty good content on this already. It's been asked a million times on modernvespa.com, and there's a couple of videos about this already, but they're kind of on tripods and they're sort of really flat and 2D. So I really wanted to make this a lot more three-dimensional so you can kind of see the difference in the widths and sizes, and I'll talk about all the features while I'm walking around these two Vespas. On the left we have a S series, which is on a small frame, and on the right we have a GTS series, which is on the large frame. Essentially, there's a lot of different Vespa models, but they're all based on one of two different frame sizes, and that's what a small frame or a large frame is. A small frame is going to be typically a motor that's going to go up to about 150 cc's, and a large frame is going to go up to 300 cc's. Before I get started, I just want to show you guys physical dimensions. So I sort of lined these up so they would both be just a little smidgen over this line right here. So the front of the bikes are pretty much equal. And from this angle, you can really see that large frame GTS really sticks out a lot further. We're going to talk about how that's going to affect things later on. And yeah, these two bikes might be from different years. One's I think only a few years old, one's about 10 years old, but the current ones are still using the large frame and the small frame chassis with minimal changes, so this is still going to be really accurate information even years and years later. So the first thing I want you guys to note is that the small frame and large frame seat height are not necessarily any different. So while the small frame might be overall smaller, as we saw, the seat height isn't going to be that much more manageable or not manageable. What's going to make a bigger difference for you guys, honestly, is if you have something like this. If you can get a seat where it's not just big and bulbous at the front, where here it's very obvious it has cutouts so that your legs come down easier, that's what's going to make a difference more than any seat height difference. A nice skinny seat in the front that still gives you lots of protection for your butt in the back is going to help you get your feet down, and that's honestly what's going to help out you smaller riders. One big difference though is definitely in the weight of these two bikes. A small frame bike is typically going to be 90 pounds lighter than a large frame bike. So 90 pounds heavier, 90 pounds lighter. If you're someone who's kind of scared of the weight of heavy things, maybe you yourself only weigh like 95 pounds, a 90-pound difference is really substantial. And if it's your first bike and you're kind of nervous, it might, lean you more towards this one than that one. However, it's important to note that even the large frame bikes, they're not excessively heavy or anything. They're pretty similar and comparable to what a motorcycle the same size would weigh. Just these guys are just so small that they're just that much lighter. The next thing we should talk about is the wheelbase. The wheelbase is the distance between your front axle and your rear axle. Now, obviously, because the GTS, the large frame, is a bigger bike, it's going to have a longer wheelbase. Wheelbase is going to affect tight handling and nimbleness and flickability. That's why you'll see a sports car, which is much more compact, is going to outhandle a big truck. There is a 3-inch difference in the wheelbase between the large frame and the small frame Vespas, and yeah, it makes the small frames super easy to manage and easy to juggle, but these large frames they're no truck either. They definitely handle and can turn on a dime, especially with these smaller tires. They'll outmaneuver in tight corners even a little 400cc motorcycle, no problem. The motors, on the other hand, are a big difference. On the small frames, you can get maybe as high as 14 horsepower versus on the large frames you can get up to 21 horsepower, so that's a big difference. They come in all different sizes. The small frames have come in anything from like 50 cc's to up to 150 with all sorts of 100, 125 and other situations in between. And the large frames I think have mostly come in as little as 125 all the way up to 300 cc's. A small frame can get up to about 62 miles per hour or about 100 kilometers an hour if you just leave it stock from factory. But the large frames, on the other hand, can get 80 miles per hour or 130 kilometers an hour. So obviously GTS is going to be a ton more easy to manage and less scary on the highway, because on one you might be able to keep up, on the other one you can definitely keep up, and you might even have a little bit of extra power in order to get out of trouble's way if you need to. Now with all that power comes great responsibility, which is where we talk about braking. And honestly, braking in this situation definitely favors the GTS or the large frame Vespas, and that's because while they both have a disc brake in the front, the GTS or the large frame Vespas also has a disc in the rear. See, if we look on the small frame, it's just a little drum brake. We can tell by this rod will be pushed when you activate the lever, and that's going to expand the drums inside of there to slow down the wheel from spinning. Versus here we have a disc brake, and what I want to show you guys on this bike is this right here is an ABS sensor. You don't have that on this bike at all. Some of the newer small frames will have that kind of right into here, but they'll only have it on the front. They'll never have it on the back, or at least not as of 2021. And those little ABS features for the ABS sensors to read off of, that's going to add a lot more safety for braking and traction control on the more fancy, more powerful large frame Vespas. Now there are some other things to keep in mind as well. On the large frames, you're going to have a wider but more shallow storage box, and that's because the motor underneath there is kind of bigger and the overall layout and design of the bike. If you want to fit a full face, you're probably not going to fit it in here unless you have a top box mounted. Versus on small frames, you have a very deep box because the motor is not very big. Here you can definitely fit a full face helmet. There you can't. So bigger does not necessarily mean better all the time. And of course, like I mentioned, these small frames, they won't pull as hard, especially when you're riding 2 up, versus on the bigger large frames with the bigger motors, you will generally find that they pull just fine whether you're 1 up or 2 up. It all seems to be all good. So I guess the final question is, which one of these 2 bikes do I prefer? Well, I would recommend, if you want to be doing the option of maybe some touring, commuting that takes you on the highway every day, any sort of rides that are probably longer than 20-30 minute durations in one direction, I would probably go with the GTS. But if you prefer just local trips, staying in town, you're not going to be leaving the city or going on any highways, this small frame bike has more than enough speed and power for you. So personally, what did I pick? Well, it was, honestly, I went with the small frame. That's my bike right there. That's a customer's bike that's just here until it goes up to storage tomorrow. But yeah, no, I absolutely love the small frame Vespa. The reason why I went with the small frame for myself personally is because the advantages that this bike has over that bike, it's all good if it's going to be your only motorcycle. But for me, the Vespa is just, it's more of a city ride for me. I have a highway bike. I have a big leader, Harley Davidson V-Rod. I don't need more power. I don't need longer wheelbase. I don't need anything more fancy, more crazy. I picked this thing up for like $1,000 American, and it's great. It hauls ass. It takes me where I need to go, and it was cheap, super reliable, and the advantages that the large frame has over the small frame, for me, I don't need it. Anyway, if you like this video, please hit that like button, give it a thumbs up. I would really appreciate that. If you want to see more videos about Vespas and all kinds of other motorcycles, please subscribe to my channel or visit YouMotorcycle.com. Thank you guys so much for watching. Peace.